we have many instances like this where we have tourists actually taking images of themselves next to sacred sites, and that's completely okay. But in this scenario, that person was naked, and being naked at a sacred site, especially next to a sacred object, which we consider a being, is definitely sacrilege.
So tell us what makes these sites so sacred to the people of Bali.
So trees, volcanoes, shrines, and sources of water, they are mere everyday objects, but they host a lot of beings and they host spirit. And therefore, it's a sign of mutual respect to not disturb them. They are not, as per se, worshipped as God. However, they are considered as manifestations of God. They're considered as those that have been there before, especially if they're old or big, or if they're at a sacred site, or if they're powerful. Volcanoes are a great example of something that's old, big, and powerful. And therefore, the locals, the Balinese, would really, really respect them.
Yeah. You know, anyone who's visited Bali knows what a gentle, religious, thoughtful community the Balinese are. Has this always been a problem, or has the rise of influencers with all their social media postings exacerbated this problem?
I think now we know about it because of social media, but I'm pretty sure it must have happened before as well. There are a lot of unwritten rules and different sort of places in Bali, nooks and corners in Bali that are considered sacred. It's just a matter of really asking a local whether or not it's appropriate to visit, or whether or not it's appropriate to pose, well, especially naked next to a sacred object or a tree or something else. However, it's really a matter of mutual respect. It's locals respecting nature and giving them their space, and also respecting God and giving God his or her space.
How can awareness be raised of this issue with tourists coming in who may not be aware of that sensitivity?
Well, if you see a shrine or if you see a tree that's covered in a checkered cloth, or if you see offerings placed next to it, then that's most definitely sacred. However, the best thing to do is just to ask a local nearby and just see if it's appropriate or not. Just remember that you're a guest visiting, and before you do anything, it's just best to ask permission.
Let's talk a little bit about the return of tourists to Bali. What has it been like?
Bali was really, really empty, and it's just so comforting to see Bali back. The main philosophy of the Balinese is of mutual respect, and it's obviously extended to tourists and to guests who visit the island. It is so nice to see tourism coming back again, especially with flights, international flights returning. There's still a lot of domestic visitors coming in from Jakarta, Surabaya, Medan, and other big towns of Indonesia. But now we do see a rise in American, European, and some Australians as well.
Yeah. And as you say, locals, I mean, Bali depends so heavily on tourists. Are locals prepared and ready to sort of meet that demand now?
Yes, they are, and they're really, really happy to be able to host the tourists again. A lot of sites, such as in Kuta, they're still pretty empty. A lot of the main roads in Ubud are pretty empty, and we saw a rise of a lot of new different hotels and restaurants and cafes that have risen, especially working cafes where you can open your laptop and work away with Wi-Fi available. I think that's one thing that has really risen up, not only because of the digital nomad scene before, but especially now with people being out of their offices.
Mm. You know, I think another thing that many people noticed about Bali was just the pressure of all the tourism that it had brought to the community, the pollution, you know, the waters becoming very dirty. Has Bali recovered in some way because of that period where there wasn't that pressure?
For most of the Balinese, we kind of took this moment of the pandemic as a time for introspection, as a time on reflection, seeing how things can be done better. Obviously, with the lack of funds coming in, it's quite difficult to act upon them. But yes, they have been thought out, they have been strategized, and it's just now a matter of putting everything into place.